The 2024 fantasy baseball season is over, but your boys are back. We are talking what's next for some teams that are kind of big topics in baseball right now. So first on today's show, we are going to be talking about the San Diego Padres. But first, Ernie, John, what's up, guys? How you guys doing?
Hey, well, we're excited to be back this off-season 2024. We're looking forward to 2025. This Padres team is the team that had the the roster to win, and they didn't. So what's going to happen now this off-season? What's up, John? You ready to talk Padres?
I'm ready to talk some Padres, talk some Angels too. Some two teams that are perennially in the mix, kind of for the wrong reasons. So excited to hit a lot of different angles here. So let's do it.
So the Padres, one of the funnest teams to watch in 2024, second most wins in franchise history with 93. So when you look back at the 2024 season, what's the first thing that comes into your mind when you think of the San Diego Padres? John, let's start with you.
Yeah, I mean, my first thing, that's kind of a 1A and a 1B. And I think, if we say why were the Padres as good as they were, I think they were, the production that they got from Jackson Merrill, you have to circle that and say this is the exact spark plug that they needed, to get the production that they got, 292, 24 home runs, and 90 RBI from a rookie. And for him to just take over that center field position and act like he's been there for 10 years. And I think he led baseball. Don't hold me to this, but I also think he led baseball in walk-off home runs, or definitely at least by a rookie. So just he brings that energy. He brought that spark, and that team needed it in the worst way. And I'll kind of say the 1B from that, when I think of the Padres 2024, I just keep thinking about how bad that Xander Bogaerts contract is, man. I mean, Xander Bogaerts, for them to sign him to that deal, and you can comp it with a guy like Trey Turner, but Bogaerts is pathetic, man. I mean, he finished 2024 with 264, 11 homers, and 44 RBI. And this is a guy who was the MVP or one of the MVPs of the Red Sox that's done absolutely nothing in San Diego in 2 years.
And he is the highest paid player for the Padres in 2024. So that is, you hit it right on the head right there, man. All right, Ernie, take away from the 2024 Padres season.
I mean, this is the greatest Padres team we had ever seen in Padres history, right? And it all started with starting pitching. The Padres went ahead and traded Juan Soto, their perennial star, for a guy like Michael King, who hasn't proven himself. But what Michael King went ahead and do for the Padres was amazing. He was lights out. And then with the addition of Dylan Cease, this team was a two-headed monster with that starting rotation. Drew Darvish missed most of the season, and they were able to hold it down. So big props to the Padres, man. They did well with pitching, and that's what took them far. And it was a big scare for the Dodger team, if you ask me. It was a Dodger team that was one game brink away from being left out of the playoffs.
Yeah, being a Dodgers fan, the only Dodgers fan on the episode today, it was very scary watching the Dodgers face the Padres in the playoffs. And honestly, I was more scared of the Padres than any other team that I could see,
Yes.
The Dodgers facing. And they just had everything. Like John, like you said, with Jackson Merrill, and Ernie, like you said, with the additions of like Michael King, like everyone was thinking like Juan Soto, why did you trade Juan Soto, especially so early? Like, why wouldn't you wait until the trade deadline the following season rather than, in the off season? But looking back now, the trade actually really worked for them. Without that trade, they wouldn't have gotten the Michael King. And was Kyle Higashioka also part of that trade? Yeah. So and he was like a big part of the playoff push also. So without those two guys, I don't think the Padres would have been doing as well as they did, in 2024.
That's tough to say. And I mean, I think we can talk about that a million times over and over too. But what does this season look like if they don't trade a Soto? And, they knew the writing was on the wall that no matter what, Soto was going to test the market. And, I kind of revert back to if you're not paying a guy like Xander Bogaerts that contract, are you probably going to keep Soto and try to sign him, regardless of him trying to test out free agency? But, they made a really good, smart move saying, we know we're not going to sign this guy. let's maximize his trade value now, and I think that's why they didn't wait till the season started. I guess I was more surprised with the Dylan Cease trade last year, and I'm curious because the Padres are a team that has made some huge splashes. So I mean, that kind of leads us to what are they going to do this year? And they're also losing a few key pieces that they had last year too. Jurickson Profar is also, I'll say almost the 1C of what I could have said. Why were the Padres as successful as they were? I mean, nobody expected the season they got a Jurickson Profar. And who are they going to bring back? Who are they going to trade? And who are they going to let walk? That depends on dollars. And that's really what led to the Juan Soto trade.
Yeah, definitely. So you mentioned Jackson Merrill. It looks like the Padres have found their center fielder for the next 5 years, in Jackson Merrill. And this dude isn't a center fielder by trade. They did it right, man. They loaded up on shortstops because generally the shortstop of a team is the most athletic and most baseball guy on the team. He's the captain. He's the captain of the infield. They have Jackson Merrill, Xander Bogaerts. They had Ha-Seong Kim, who's now a free agent also. Manny Machado, that came up as a shortstop, eventually moved to third base for the Orioles. They have a team. Oh, Fernando Tatis. How could you forget Fernando Tatis Jr. also? You have a team full of shortstops, and really it's just a bunch of baseball guys, like legit baseball guys who have amazing talent and can easily just move around on the field. They signed Xander Bogaerts for that big contract partially for his offense, but halfway basically for his defense as well. He's regarded as one of the best defensive shortstops in baseball today. And moving him over to second base, it was kind of just like, what are you doing? You're moving over your star shortstop that you just signed for like 18 million a year or 20 million a year or something like that, and you're moving him to second base? Like, how does that make any sense? Oh, it's because you got Ha-Seong Kim that is even a better defender than the Xander Bogaerts is. And so the Padres were without Ha-Seong Kim for the entire postseason, injury, but they made it work, man. They made it work. So now, so I already mentioned they have their center fielder, Jackson Merrill. Tatis signed that 13-year deal back in 2021. Machado signed through his age 40 season until 2033. They definitely have a solid core, man. 2024 ended with a loss to the division in the division series against the Dodgers. But to me, it seems like these two haven't seen the last of each other in the postseason for the next few years coming. And like you mentioned, John, there are a few key free agents that the Padres are losing, starting with Jurickson Profar. Now, have you heard about any of the prospects that are coming up possibly for the San Diego Padres? Ernie, go ahead and start with you.
Yeah, well, it's not looking great for this Padres roster, right? They're losing almost up to 10 players to free agency. You're mentioning Ha-Seong Kim, Jurickson Profar, Elias Diaz, Higgy. There's a bunch of names. Are you going to resign all of them, or are you going to start looking from the farm system? Because it's getting to that point where you're this close to competing with the Dodgers. And the Dodgers are only going to get any much better going forward. So it's up to ownership. They're really going to spend that money to bring back some of these tier players like Profar, Kim, which I don't see them coming back. I see this team pulling back and just trying to bring back from their farm system. Now, John, I know you're more of a prospects guy. So who do you got out there from San Diego that could be coming up?
Yeah, as far as prospects go, I mean, their main guy is Ethan Salas. And right. I think if we hear Ethan Salas' name outside of what he's done so far in fall ball, I mean, he's been a monster. The guys are Jackson Merrill. I just saw, I think Tatis called him a dog. So that's a guy they're probably not calling up for, at least another couple years. He could be in a trade for like a Garrett Crochet type, but I think they have enough pitching too. So I don't think they're going to do anything on the prospect side of things. If I were them, they only have one top 10 prospect right now that was expected to come up in 2025. Everyone else they're a very young farm team. So I think if they package some of those, they could make a trade. But outside of Ethan Salas, I mean, that's their guy. I think they're honestly going to re-sign Profar. I think he is very comfortable there. Noted, he's made multiple stops. So I think they'll sign a Profar. I think they'll let Ha-Seong Kim walk unless he goes very cheap. And if I were them, I would actually bring in a first baseman. I think Arias, Cronenworth, one of those two can cover second base. You can put Bogarts back at shortstop, let Ha-Seong Kim walk. You have a team full of shortstops, but nobody plays shortstop, which is kind of weird. So I think that's not really necessarily a huge need for them. But I think this Padres lineup looks so much scarier with a huge bat like a Juan Soto or even a Josh Bell type in 2022 when he was, a power threat. And they don't really have that guy, especially when Tatis or Machado's slumping a little bit. So a couple names I would watch out for: Pete Alonso, Paul Goldschmidt, Christian Walker, guys that you could just fill in either at the DH or first base spot. Not going to cost you a ton. Nothing like Juan Soto. They have the arms. So, I mean, I think outside of prospects, not just calling someone up, I think they're going to sign a couple guys.
Yeah, I totally agree. You have to spend the money. You're almost there. You're at the cusp of winning this title. You have to spend the money. I mean, revenue's coming in. The fans are selling out more than ever, and people are buying the merch. So you have to spend the money. Now, I do think Profar is going to be a little bit more expensive than the Padres expected, which he's asking around $10 million. Will you pay that much for Profar?
All day.
Yeah. $10 million now in 2024's game is chump change.
Okay.
That's money that you give to a guy that's just kind of like fine.
Yeah.
It's crazy to say that because we'll never see that type of money in our lifetimes. But Jurickson Profar became a fan favorite this season. He was kind of a fan favorite in previous seasons before, but this year even more than ever. Just heckling the Dodgers during the division series, I think that kind of just like boosted his just Padre-ness, and I think fans are really going to miss him if he doesn't re-sign with the Padres. And I think he's probably going to be a top priority for the Padres to sign, primarily because of his defense. The Padres are all about defense, offense too, but they pride themselves in their defense, not like the Yankees, right? But
true.
I think that they do sign Jurickson Profar. I think they give him more than just 1 year. I'm going to say they probably give him a 3-year deal. He is a little bit on the older side. He's already in his 30s. So they can't give him too much of a big contract, especially because of his track record. This was the best season that Jurickson Profar's ever had. John and I were even talking about mid-season. Maybe Jurickson Profar needs to be in MVP talks, and then he kind of like slowed down, came back to earth a little bit, but he was still a productive player. And having that guy in your lineup towards the bottom of the lineup, unless he gets hot, moving him up and down, I think Jurickson Profar is just a perfect fit for the Padres. And left field, he leaves a big hole, because of his solid defense.
Right. I totally agree. I can see why Jurickson Profar comes back. Now, there's another question. Joe Musgrove, he's out for the season. Tommy John, he went out in the middle of the postseason against the Dodgers. Wasn't looking good. And, you're talking about, yes, you have Michael King, Yu Darvish, and Dylan Cease. But now the question is, are you going to look into getting some pitching as well? Because you have Matt Waldron, who looked great last year with his knuckleball. But now, do you need some guys to eat up some innings? And I think that's one of the big places they need to look for. Maybe some experienced starter like Martin Perez, maybe bring them back. I don't know. Is there any better option out there that you guys think the Padres could bring?
There's one.
Tom said it earlier with Garrett Crochet. Honestly, I think that he would fit perfectly in the San Diego roster. It'd be a little bit scary for the other division rivals, like mainly the Dodgers. But I think it just makes sense. I think that trade would make sense, and the Padres do have the prospects to make it happen. Also, they got that guy from the Yankees last season. I think his name is Lockridge. Is that right? Brandon Lockridge. Solid defense, big speed, potentially could be a star outfielder in the future. But if that gets you a guy like Garrett Crochet, I would take that. I would take that deal for sure.
Got to jump on it real quick.
Yeah, there's one trade or there's one signing I would love to see, and it's not going to happen, and that's Roki Suzuki. There's absolutely no reason he should be going to the Dodgers. Number one, I should start off and say that should be illegal. I will riot. No, he should definitely sign with the Padres. the connection with Yu Darvish, make things a little bit interesting, have a little rivalry going with Yamamoto and Ohtani, but that's just wishful thinking. He's going to the Dodgers. Outside of that, I mean, there's maybe like a Justin Bieber, Shane Bieber's out there. I could see them going after an arm just to replace a Musgrove, and I think Shane Bieber's a pretty fair comp.
Yeah, totally.
Yeah, the problem is Joe Musgrove is kind of expensive, and do the Padres want to pay that much money for a guy that's unproven, that guy that's only 22 years old? Bringing him over into MLB, even though he is regarded as one of the best pitchers in Japan, just like Yamamoto was, and do the Padres want to spend that much money knowing that they already have a really big payroll as it is? I don't think they do. I think that a trade makes more sense, for the Padres front office, and use a little bit of money in signing, your left fielder, like I mentioned a couple minutes ago.
And that's where I disagree, because the Padres are not necessarily cheap. I think the only reason they traded Juan Soto is because he's going to get $50+ million a year, and they said we're just not interested. Outside of that, I think they'll spend on literally anybody or anything if it makes their team better, because they have to go against the best team in baseball in their division and that team's not going anywhere anytime soon either. So I think they will spend for the right players. I think unlike the team we're going to talk about next, they're not just going to cut checks to cut checks either. I think, sorry, Ernie. But I do think that they're going to make a splash this year.
Well, remember, they're also losing Tanner Scott, who was a big reliever for the Padres this past season. So that leaves a big hole in their bullpen as well. So I think their starting rotation looks pretty good, even as it is now. But I think Tanner Scott leaves a bigger hole than Joe Musgrove does, because you have your guys go out there. You have Michael King, you have Dylan Cease, and Yu Darvish. That's a big 1-2-3 punch right there that could definitely take them through the postseason. But then after 7 innings, I'm
you only got Suarez.
There you go. Yeah. Like, he can't handle 2 innings every game.
You're definitely gonna need a setup, man. And these bullpen guys are being expensive these days. They're not cheap.
Mm-hmm.
So they're gonna definitely have to look somebody to replace Tanner Scott. Either bring him back or go look for some other arms, because it's not cheap out there for these bullpen guys no more.
Now, I think you said, Will, you also mentioned too, they're going to have to sign some of these guys. And if you trade for a guy, even if you trade for a Crochet, he's getting a new contract. So you're paying him. What I think would be very interesting, and this is going to be my bold call just because I need a couple during the podcast. Phillies are going to trade for Grant Crochet. They're also going to have an abundance of pitching, and they will trade Ranger Suarez to San Diego because he is cheap. He's on an expiring contract after next season. They can get 1 year out of Ranger Suarez. Phillies get Crochet.
How pissed are Phillies fans going to be if they trade Ranger Suarez, though? Because Ranger Suarez is definitely a fan favorite also.
Meh.
I guess you're the resident Phillies fan, so you would know more than us, right?
As I'm wearing the Padres hat, yeah. No, I mean, the Phillies also can't pay everybody, too. I mean, this is not a Phillies episode, but they've got a couple guys coming up. So if they're going to say, hey, Ranger's probably going to walk next year anyway, let's see if we can get something for him. I could see something like that going down. And then Garrett Crochet seems like the Phillies guy. They seem very heavy on him from everything I've read, heard, seen. But we'll see. If I honestly think if the Padres were to offer Ethan Salas, he's going to San Diego. But I don't think they're parting with Ethan Salas.
Nah, man, I don't think so either. It looks nice.
All right,
it's
guys.
One of those pieces you got to hold.
So, anything else you want to add to this San Diego Padres 2025 potential lineup, starting pitching rotation? We kind of covered the bullpen also. Anything else that you could see that could potentially happen to actually make the Padres be the overall favorites to go to the World Series and possibly win the whole thing in 2025?
Yeah, I totally see them getting another starting pitcher, something cheap, something like a 1-year type deal with an opt-in for the 2nd year. And I think they're going to build that bullpen. They definitely need it after losing Tanner Scott to the free agency. They're going to need to build that bullpen, and they just got to stay healthy. And I think this team could overcome this Dodger team if they really want to. They proved it last year that if they would have just gotten their bats a little hotter at the right time in Game 4 and Game 5, we would have been talking about the Padres being the World Series champion right now. So, it's one of those, you start learning about the Dodgers roster a little bit more, and then once you face them again, this is a renewed rivalry. Well, just letting you know, Padres-Dodgers is going to be a beautiful thing for baseball. We need a West Coast type rivalry, so this is great for the game.
It's fun. It's fun to watch, because the Giants, who are the real rivals of the Dodgers, have just not been good for a really long time, and
a decade.
And I've been saying it for years now. And like one of the reasons why the Dodgers have failed in the postseason and seasons past is because they don't really have much competition during the regular season. So then they go against these powerhouses in the postseason, and they're just not ready for it. I think the Padres, being as good as they were, prepared the Dodgers for the rest of the postseason.
Definitely. But this projected lineup, you think it's going to stay similar to 2024?
I think so.
Yeah, me too.
I think this kind of transitions. I was going to say transitions to our next point here that we're going to talk about a little bit. But I would say the Padres, if we're talking one big splash, the Padres would be one of 5 to 7 teams that could be in play for.
No, not my Trout. Please don't let him.
You want a rivalry, man? You trade Mike Trout to the Padres. They can afford him. They can absolutely afford him. They don't have to give up any of their top prospects if they want to take on that contract. They could use a DH. If you don't want to sign Profar, then you can put him in left field too. But they could absolutely use a DH. You're talking about a place he's already comfortable in Southern California. If it's not Philly, Padres, Yankees, he would never go to the Mets.
Now, how much longer does Trout have on his contract?
It's 2030. 20. It's a pretty long contract. Yeah. Also 13. Yeah. Even longer, I think. No, wait. I think it's longer, guys. Yeah, it was a 12-year contract back in 2021. Talking about 32, 33 maybe a year. Wow. So we got a long time. We're paying him $35.5 million a year.
Yeah.
It's a lot of money,
I think
man.
If that trade does happen, the Angels are going to have to eat some of that contract. I don't think any team's going to take on that big contract, knowing that he hasn't been able to stay healthy for the past 4 seasons now.
And that's where I disagree. I think if you are willing to give up a top prospect, they'll eat most of, if not a lot of that contract. If you don't want to give up any prospects, just say, hey, will you take this contract? And the Padres could take on, I think I saw 37.1 million, like you said, 35.5, whatever it is. Padres could eat that. They don't have to give up a prospect.
It's definitely going to put them over the CBT threshold, though, because they're pretty close as it is now.
Yeah,
it's just money.
Looks like the Padres don't want to spend. They're being cheap. I don't know why. They should be spending if they want to beat the Dodgers.
Well, we have about 4 months until the season starts, and there's a lot of moves to be made, a lot of free agents that are going to sign, and potential trades that could happen, and we're just going to have to see where it goes from there. All right, so we've reached the end of the show. I am Will Power for John and for Ernie. We will see you guys next time talking about some Angels baseball. Peace out.